The dog wouldn't cross the upstairs hallway. Not for treats, not for toys, not even when we called him like something was wrong. And the first time I stepped into that hallway alone, I realized why. Because the air wasn't just cold, it felt owned. Here's the question. If the man wanted his doorway back downstairs, who was waiting upstairs? This is part 2 of the Uffculme coach house story. Same building, same family, same bricked-up doorway. Tonight we're focusing on the upstairs hallway, and the thing our daughter started calling the master of the house. We'll go through the timeline, the witnesses, the physical details, and the theories. One rule: if you live in an old house, don't stand in your hallway with your back to an open door. Upstairs was simple. A narrow landing, bedrooms off both sides, a small window at the end that looked down into the yard. The hallway had a sound, not a creak, not a draft, a hush, like the house was listening. The dog found it first. He'd come up the stairs, then stop. Front paws on the landing, back paws still on the top step. You know that look dogs get when they're deciding whether to run or fight? He chose neither. He chose, don't go there. We tested it. Different times of day, different lighting, different people calling him. Same result. He'd stare down the hallway, then back away. But that's not the worst part, because our daughter didn't just notice the hallway. She started talking about someone who lived in it. It started with a question. She asked, very casually, "Who's the master?" We said, "What do you mean?" And she replied, "The master of the house. He doesn't like noise." Curiosity loop. Kids don't usually use the word master like that. So where did it come from? We asked her to describe him. She didn't describe a shadow. She described a man. He's upstairs. His clothes are old. He's cross. But that's not the worst part, because she said the master wasn't the same as the man at the doorway. The man goes through. The master watches. That week, the upstairs hallway started doing something new. At night, when the house was quiet, we'd hear a single step. Not a series, not pacing. One step, then nothing. Why one step? Why stop? Like someone testing the floor, like someone checking if we were awake. We tried to catch it. We waited. We listened. We stood at the bedroom door and watched the landing. Nothing. But that's not the worst part, because the moment we stopped trying, it got bolder. One night, our daughter woke up and walked into the hallway. Not sleepwalking, not confused, purposeful. I followed her. Quiet, bare feet on cold carpet. She stopped halfway down the hallway, and she spoke to the empty air. "I'm not being loud." Then she turned to me and said, "He says you're not allowed to stand there." Another curiosity loop. Not, he doesn't want you to. Not allowed. Like a rule, like a boundary. The peak moment happened the next morning, in daylight, which is always worse. The dog refused the hallway again, so I decided to do something stupid. I stepped onto the landing and walked down it, slowly. Halfway, same spot where our daughter had stopped. The air changed, not colder, denser, like walking into a room where someone has been smoking for hours. And then I heard it. A breath. Not mine. Not behind me. Right beside my ear. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I just froze. Because the only thing worse than being afraid is realizing you're not alone. If it was the house settling, why did it breathe? I backed up. 1 step, 2. And the dog, still at the top of the stairs, whimpered. Not barked, whimpered. Be honest. If you heard a breath beside your ear in an empty hallway, would you stay in that house another night? Let's weigh it properly. 3 theories. Theory 1. Paranormal. Old houses can hold more than memories. If the downstairs doorway was a route, the upstairs hallway felt like a boundary. The master idea fits an old hierarchy, a place with rules, a presence that polices them. But that's not the worst part, because if something is enforcing rules, it expects obedience. Theory 2, psychological and social. Our daughter could be building a story to explain our reactions. The dog could be reacting to our tension. And the breath? Auditory misperception, a draft, a radiator hiss. But here's the problem. Drafts don't feel targeted. They don't feel personal. Theory 3, practical. Animals hear things we don't. A mouse in the walls, a bird in the loft, a pipe that knocks at the same time each day, and old carpeted hallways can amplify tiny sounds. A neighbor's door, a distant footstep. But that's not the worst part, because none of that explains the timing. Same spot, same reaction, same refusal. Here's my verdict. The downstairs doorway felt like a passage. The upstairs hallway felt like a checkpoint. And the master of the house felt like the reason the passage mattered. What still doesn't add up is the authority. Why did it feel like a rule was being enforced? Why did our daughter speak like she was relaying instructions? And why did the dog refuse that one stretch of hallway like it was a cliff edge? We didn't wait for it to escalate. We didn't wait for the master to introduce himself. We moved out. Quietly. Quickly. One question for the comments. If you lived in a house where a child described two presences, one that goes through and one that watches, what would you do first? If you want the next part, subscribe, because there's one detail we haven't talked about yet. Click the next video on screen, and keep your hallway light on tonight, because if something in your house feels like it owns the corridor, it might not be trying to scare you. It might be trying to keep you in your place.